We are on our ABC of mental health journey, and tonight we are at the letter V. Now, I'm gonna ask y'all to forgive me because I don't have all of my equipment set up. My son is using my computer, so we might be a little out of order tonight, but we're committed and we're gonna get it done. So we're going to be talking about the letter V, and V is for one of my favorite to talk about and least favorite to talk about at the same time, because we're going to be talking about vulnerability. I call it the V word. I mean, like, it's almost like a cuss word in some circles. I know me personally, I struggle with the ability to be vulnerable. Good evening, Elevated Mindset. Welcome to the live. So we're going to be talking a little bit about vulnerability. I do have my notes, but it's and like I said, we out here doing stuff different because my son has my computer. So if it start glitching, I won't know. If y'all put something crazy in the chat, I'm just going to ignore it because I won't be able to filter anything. So just we going to work together. We're going to work together. Hope everything gets done well. So we're going to do our talking point. We'll give you a little tip, and then we're going to be out of here. So V for vulnerability. Number one, vulnerability is the doorway to emotional safety. Okay, so safety doesn't come from perfection. Oh my God, safety doesn't come from perfection, it comes from authentic connection. Again, sometimes we struggle with vulnerability because we have this ideology that if I am my perfect version of myself, I don't need connection. Right? We talked a little bit about that last night. But we need to be interconnected as a people. That is a byproduct of being human. So, when we have authentic connection, you don't need this air of being perfect, right? Because actually, people don't connect with the perfect, curated version of ourselves. They connect with the real you, right? The messy you, the wild you, the crazy you, the authentic version of you. That's what people connect with, okay? So when we're emotionally honest, we teach other people that it's safe for us to be real and for them to be real too, okay? So here's a faith-based tip. Good evening, Gator. Hi, L. Thank you, innocent boy. Appreciate y'all. So here's a faith-based tip. When you feel the urge to hide your real authentic self, right? Ask yourself, what would it look like to be safe and secure and confident in this moment without needing the approval of others? Okay? So again, vulnerability is the doorway to emotional safety. All right? Number two, unspoken feelings become stored as stress. Okay, so we talked a lot about this in previous videos. When I am suppressing my emotions, my feelings, my desires, all of that is stressful to your body, to your psyche. It's like closing everything up in a box. And so when all the pressure gets compounded in there and it shows up as symptomology, it's not good for us. Suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear, it stores them in our nervous system, which leads to stress, tension, burnout, and emotional numbness. Okay, so here's a quick faith-based tip. Each day, okay, release emotional pressure. You could do that through a myriad of ways, a 1,001 interventions. You could do that by prayer. You could do that by journaling. You could do that by talking to someone. You could do that by coloring. You could do that by cooking. Like, you can release that a myriad of ways, a multitude of ways, so many ways to release it. But you have to get those emotions out some way, okay? Because when you are not vulnerable enough to speak your feelings, you will suppress them. You will compound them, okay? You will ultimately hurt yourself if you try to keep everything in, all right? So understand that unspoken feelings become stored stress. In order to have openness and open relationships, you have to be vulnerable enough to tell other people, share with other people about your feelings. Okay. Number three, naming emotions lowers their power. Naming emotions lower their power. So we talked a lot before about emotions, how unexpressed emotions compound and then they can blow up. They just blow up. They come out all kind of crazy ways, right? And research shows that naming an emotion decreases its intensity in the brain. It activates logic and lowers reactive energy. So if you don't know what reactive energy is when somebody does something to you and instead of processing, you immediately react. So if I am able to identify and name the emotion, then I can decrease the likelihood that I am going to react in a negative or illogical way. Okay? So we had, again, being vulnerable enough to identify the feeling. Okay? Put the wall down a little bit so that you can identify the feeling and therefore decrease its reactive energy. Okay. Faith-based tip here is turn this into a rhythm of self check-in. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling and what do I need in this moment? Okay. What do I need in this moment? Okay. So again, being part of being vulnerable is having a level of emotional honesty. And that level of emotional honesty protects you from shame. We talked a couple of nights ago about shame and how carrying shame, operating in shame, uh, partnering with shame it causes negative impacts to oneself, right? We talked a little bit about that before. And so shame grows in silence. Being emotionally honest dissolves shame by reinforcing self-worth and creating rational repair. Okay. Okay. So here's a faith-based tip. If ever you're tempted to isolate when you're struggling, lean into honesty with someone who is a safe person, someone who is caring, has a level of concern and compassion with you, somebody who you have already identified it is okay to be vulnerable with. Okay? Now, this is an interesting one. Oversharing is not the same as vulnerability. So I use this example oftentimes. Everybody knows somebody in their universe or that they've come across that talks a lot, but they ain't really saying nothing. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes we will overshare in efforts to connect, but we're not talking about anything of substance. We're just talking. It's like that endless small talk or that kind of like um overload of words, but you ain't saying nothing. Like you just talking, but you ain't saying nothing. That is not the same as being vulnerable. Being vulnerable has some substance, some girth, some, value to what you're saying and what you're sharing. Sometimes you can be vulnerable with saying very little words, right? But you are clear and concise in the verbiage. You're clear and concise in the communication. So don't confuse, hey Trisha, don't confuse vulnerability, right, with oversharing. Because again, you can say a lot of words and not really being open and honest and transparent in your communication. In fact, I know I have done this. I will actually say a whole lot about the thing that's not the thing that I don't want to share about, if that makes sense. So I'm like, if I am upset, if I am annoyed, if I am having a feeling, a lot of times I will fill the room or the conversation with stuff I really don't care about because I don't want to talk about the thing that's agitating me or I'm having a feeling. So don't confuse vulnerability with oversharing. Vulnerability always is going to involve emotional risk, okay? Emotional risk. Whereas oversharing can actually be a trauma response or attempt to deflect. Again, like I said, you can be saying a whole lot of nothing, okay? Here's a faith-based tip. Before opening up, ask, is this person emotionally safe? Because again, sometimes if I am using my lens of trauma, I will pick emotionally unsafe people to share with and then wonder why they use my business against me or wonder why it didn't turn out the way that I planned it because you haven't done the emotional research on that particular individual or you didn't believe them when they told you or showed you who they were. Now you're in a situation where you have been opened up, you have been vulnerable, and now pause, right? You have been opened up, you have been vulnerable, and it backfires on you because you didn't do your proper vetting. All right. So ask yourself, are they emotionally safe? Have they shown that they can hold my truths gently and openly? Okay. Make sure you're asking yourself that question because, like I said, I have seen this pattern replicate itself over and over again with folks. You tell them, like, hey, you might want to start being a little bit more vulnerable in your relationships, and they will pick the worst person. You're like, what? That person? The toxic one, the one we talked about in therapy. No shade, but this was not a wise decision. What I do this with my kids all the time. If they're doing something that we both know that they shouldn't be doing, I don't say stop that. I don't say like don't do that. I'll ask them, I say, is this wise? Is what you're doing a wise choice? And they'll immediately stop. Because if I'm asking that question, that means you're doing something you ain't no business doing. But make sure that you're asking proper questions and you're emotionally vetting the people that you are sharing with. Okay? Number 6, avoiding vulnerability can block your personal emotional growth. Okay. Avoidance is a coping mechanism that protects pain in the short term. All right. But it blocks long term healing and trust building. So, again, that whole concept of avoidance. All right. Avoiding vulnerability in efforts to mitigate, manage, and control the amount of pain that I will incur from this relationship actually can stunt my growth. Because again, if you're not able to be vulnerable, right? If you're not able to share your emotions, your feelings, your cares, your concerns, your desires, how do you continue to grow? Now, again, and y'all know I done said this before, you don't go ahead and tell everybody all your business. That's not is that wise? No, that's not wise. However, there should, if as an emotionally mature person, part of that is being able to discern safe individuals and when and how to share certain things. Okay. Hey, simply Ilana. Hope I did it right. I hope I did it right. Good evening. So again, we do that because in the short term, if I am closed off, if I am refusing to be vulnerable, I can manage, or ideology, my ideology is that I can manage the level of pain. So I'm like short term, like, hey, if I'm not open, I'm not gonna get hurt. Long term, you will remain isolated and stagnant in your ability to communicate with people because you don't push past that threshold. All right. So the practical faith based tip here is challenge your avoidance by taking one brave step towards connection each week. Just take a step, right? I was speaking with someone today and I said, hey, you might not be able to open up, and tell everybody all your business, but you can say hi. You can say, this is a person that's very closed off. You can say, how you doing today? That is a small step, and if they say, I'm good, how are you? Oh, I had an amazing day, or hey, I had a rough one. However it is you manage that conversation going forward, it was one small step in communication, sharing information. Okay. Number 7, emotional honesty strengthens resilience. Okay. So people who practice vulnerability bounce back faster from emotional setbacks. Okay. Listen, one of the things that I have said to myself in this process, because I told y'all at the onset of this, me and vulnerability, we don't go together at all. Okay, you know how people say, "Oh, we go together real bad." No, I don't like being vulnerable. I don't like it. It makes me upset. It's again opening yourself up to possible injury in my mind because it's a trauma response. My brain tells me, okay, even with all the knowledge that I have incurred, all the knowledge I have amassed, sometimes in relationships, my brain tells me, hey, they can hurt you with this. So I don't necessarily like vulnerability. However, I have learned that vulnerability, I have to test the theory, right? I have to be vulnerable in order to see if my concerns are valid. So it strengthens my resilience because now I get to say, hey, it might not have worked out, but at least I tried. I was vulnerable. I know not to be vulnerable with you again. Or I was vulnerable and our relationship is now stronger because of it. And I learned that I can actually be vulnerable. So you see how it builds resilience because I'm actually practicing the skill. Now I know I can be vulnerable, and practicing that vulnerability helps me bounce back if there is something that occurs that causes me emotional injury. It's like, yeah, that was tough, but I got through it. That was hard, but I'm still breathing. I'll do differently next time. I know not to trust you again, but I never learned that, right? I just go around not trusting anybody if I don't ever practice the skill. Okay? All right. So instead of withdrawing when you feel weak, lean into prayer, breath work, voice notes, whatever it is that you need to do to get through the practice of being vulnerable. Okay? Number 8, and again, forgive me, y'all, because like I said, my son got my computer, so my setup is all crazy. But we almost there. We almost done. We on number 8. Emotional honesty builds self-respect. OMG. So when I am honest with myself, okay, honest with myself, I'm going to answer your question, press V. I do not practice yoga. I'm aware of what it is. I do not practice it. Okay. So emotional honesty builds self-respect. When I am able to be honest with myself, open with myself, I am honoring my truth, right? And I know that's a buzzword for people because they're like, oh, there's only one truth. You can't have your own truth. Okay, but in the context of this situation, we are saying, hey, what is true for you in your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions? You are honest with yourself, and that builds self-respect, especially if you're a person who has been suppressing that for a really long time, placating others, people pleasing. If you've been doing that for a really, really long time, sometimes it is the practice of saying, nope, I'm not doing that. I am going to be concerned about my own feelings, my own emotions, my own desires. And that builds self-efficacy. It builds self-confidence. It builds self-respect. Okay? So here's a faith-based tip that you can use. You can use affirmations in your quiet time. You can say things to yourself like, I can be honest without fear. I can be honest without guilt. I can be safe even in chaos and things happening around me. I am able to be honest with myself. I can't be honest with anybody else. I can be honest with myself. Okay. Number 9, real, being authentic, being vulnerable is worth more than performing well. Okay, authenticity is the number one. Authenticity is the number one trait that people find trustworthy. Okay, vulnerability breaks the illusion of perfection. Right, it breaks the illusion of perfection. We talked about that before, and it makes connection feel earned, not forced. Okay. You can ask yourself, am I showing up to be loved, right? Or am I showing up to be impressive? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Okay? Am I showing up to be loved or am I showing up to be impressive? Is it more about me being the ideal person, the perfect person, or is it more about me being the real version of me? Because again, I'm going to say this again. The real version of us is messy. It's complicated. Okay, humanity is not, humanity and perfection do not go well together. Okay, I tell people all the time because I be typing in the chat and the West Philly come out like, and when I say that, like, hey, I use big words and I use ebonics, I use big words and I use colloquialism. All of that is me. That's my authentic self. Okay, so sometimes we have to be okay with inviting people into all of who we are, or at least most of it, the facets of ourselves that we're comfortable sharing. But let it be your authentic self, your real self, because people connect with that. They don't connect with the mask, they don't connect with the facade. I remember, and I mean, again, story time. Y'all didn't ask for it, but y'all here, so hey. I remember having a conversation with someone, and they said to me, like, when I see you, and when I see you, you present very differently than when I talk to you on the phone, or in certain environments, you present very differently than in other environments. And I wish that other people knew the version of you that I know. And I was like, oh, and I said, well, what do you mean? She was like, because the version that other people get is a little stuffy. It's a little cold. It's a little, a little not bougie, not stuck up, but it's a little different than what I experienced. Because y'all know I like to fuss and cackle and make jokes and things, but I only do that in certain environments. And this person said to me, like, which version of you is the real you? And I was like, well, all of it's the real me, but I'm not fitting to do all that in front of everybody. And she said, why? I said, because I'm afraid that they won't like me. Oh, snap. So you can't be vulnerable. You are still holding up the facade. And it was at that moment that I was like, I need to integrate these versions of me, right? I know that sounds really strange, but it's like, okay, if all of this is me, let me show up as all of me all the time, as much as I can. And so now you kind of get you get a little bit of A and a little bit of B. All right. Good evening, Harlow. Good evening, good evening, good evening. And we're just about to wrap up. So, last point. When you are your emotionally honest self, when you are your real, authentic self, you invite other people to be their real, authentic, unapologetic, undiluted self too. Because the version of you, right, when somebody is uncomfortable with their self, they will force everyone else around them to be a carbon copy of them. Like, for not carbon copy of them, but their inauthentic self. If you are in a room full of people and you are uncomfortable with being who you are, 9 times out of 10, other people are going to feel that and they're going to walk on eggshells because it feels uncomfortable. It feels very uncomfortable. So if you are walking around as your inauthentic self, it almost puts pressure on people to be their authentic self, right? Their inauthentic self. When you are your authentic self, it allows people the freedom to be their authentic self. And hopefully that makes sense. So again, if you are showing up, being vulnerable, being open, being honest, being authentic, a lot of times that gives people the freedom to do that too. And so you can have real, reciprocal, whole relationships. Because we both, if we out here wild and crazy, we both wild and crazy. If we both super judgy McStuffins, we out here both being super judgy McStuffins. And we relate because now you can be your authentic self and they can be their authentic self. I'm glad you called me too, Harlow, because and I was explaining to everybody in the chat beforehand. I usually have a much more streamlined, coordinated, correlated, curated list of points. But my son has my computer. I had to do it because I was not going to miss a day. I have been doing this. We are on the letter U, and I was not fitting to miss no day because my son needed my computer. So hopefully there's no questions, but if there are, please put them in the chat. Questions, comments, concerns, issues, tissues, something I said you didn't agree with, something I said that you did agree with. Do you guys find it hard to be vulnerable? I'm still working on it, guys. I have not yet arrived. It is aspirational for me to be vulnerable in certain circumstances. Harlow say yes. I'm assuming that she's saying yes to my question. But I will say that as I am learning to be more vulnerable in safe relationships, it is improving the quality of those relationships. It is improving vastly my comfortability in those relationships. To say, hey, I don't like this. Hey, I do like this. Hey, I didn't like when this happened. Hey, I appreciate it when this happened. All of that requires me to be vulnerable. And prior to that vulnerability, it was guessing game, right? For the people around me, which is not fun, okay? I am learning to be more vulnerable because it helps others. Yeah, you right. You right about it. One of the chief people who taught me this one is my daughter. Yep. because we often teach our children the things. It's like the saying is more things are caught than taught. I never taught my children to be anxious, right? But when I walk around with an anxious personality, or I walk around very guarded, guess what they learn, right? That's what they learn. They learn to be guarded. They learn to be paranoid. They learn to be anxious. It's the thing that I'm not saying that they pick up. And authenticity is very much the same. Vulnerability is very much the same. When you are not safe being your authentic self, other people around you will not be their authentic self either, because uh, they don't feel safe. So you have an excellent point, Harlow. And again, I agree. I concur. And I'm trying every day, because I don't want, unfortunately, my mistakes and my inability to be emotionally aware and emotionally secure and emotionally intelligent to rub off on the people around me. All right. Good evening, Sir Supreme. So I think I spoke to everybody. I don't know if everybody's still here, but I said hi to Alana. I said hi to Trisha. And Elevated was in here. Okay. And Harlow and Mr. Supreme. She got the shoulder. Anywho, I tell everybody we're gonna close out now. This was a shorter live than usual, but like I said, I was not gonna not do it, because we're not technically not a streak, but we're gonna get through this alphabet. So we did V today. All right, so NOMNOPQRSTUV. So W is tomorrow. I don't have my list, so I don't know what W is going to be. I don't know what W is going to be. So we shall see tomorrow night um around 9:30, 9:45. So if you would like to meet me here, I would love to see you in the chat. We'll be on W, and we only have a couple more days left. A couple more days left, and then I'll find something else to do. Thank you, Harlow. And like I tell everybody, this is not everybody's thing. I usually end these lives with prayer. If you want prayer, you can stay. If you don't, feel free to dip off. I totally understand. And again, I thank you guys for being here. I thank you guys for dropping in. And thank you everybody who has subscribed. I learned yesterday I have 502 subscribers. I know Harlow was one of them. So thank you so much for everybody who subscribed recently. I appreciate it. I know we out here fighting for every sub. So I appreciate you pushing that button. Okay. 502. Yeah, 502. We out here doing something, okay? Now the watch hours, on the other hand, we gonna praise them in advance for all the things. And like Supreme say, God ain't worried about these sub numbers. However, I'm out here trying to spread the good word and the gospel, okay? So maybe I got some favor. We'll see. But anyway, again, I'm just gonna go pray out. If you want to drop, you can, and if not, you stay for the prayer. Father, we thank you for all the things that you are doing. We thank you that you are helping us be more vulnerable, be more open, be more honest, be more authentic, because it honors you. I pray, God, that who have not been able to live their truth, who have been suppressing their needs, their wants, their desires, who have been quiet about what they desire in their relationships, in their communications, Father, I pray that you will open their mouths, that you will allow them to feel secure and safe, that you would give them discernment so they will not share themselves with the wrong people, but they would share themselves with the people who are going to be reciprocal in their relationships, that are going to give unto them and receive unto them the way that you would have them to be. Father, we are made for koinonia. We are made for fellowship. We are made to be in unity with one of others. So I ask that you would give the people that desire community their community. For those who are seeking a safe space, I pray that you would lead them to it. In Jesus' name, amen. I pray that you all have an amazing, that's hilarious. Okay, I'm sorry. I just saw some Reeves comment said not using the big words on God. God know all the words. So, eh? That's how I talk. Every God knows how he made me. He knows. Now y'all might need a thesaurus. But he don't. Anyway, I pray he will hear my prayer, and I pray that you guys received it. Enjoy the rest of your night. If I don't see you guys on another live tonight, hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you all who have been in here, and thank you, Supreme, for giving me that good laugh because I need it. I'm about to go share that laugh with my husband. Y'all have an amazing night. Thank you.